So desperate is she to be healed that she dares to push through the crowds alone and reach out and touch Jesus' clothing. She's probably not expecting this touch to be very welcome, because in those days, the kind of illness that this lady had would have probably made her somewhat of a social outcast. But she is driven by need, and she has a really great confidence in her faith. And she's right to have such confidence. Because if we can trust our fellow humans to organise a coffee rota and make sure that the refreshments happen after the service, then we really should be able to trust in God. The woman in Mark's Gospel puts her faith in Jesus, and immediately that she touches his clothes, she is healed. And Jesus notices. "Who touched me?" he declares. He perhaps already knew. After all, God does know everything about us. So maybe he was trying to point out that when we reach out to Jesus in faith, he notices us. And then we come to the second miracle story. In this one, Jairus also believes strongly that Jesus is the answer to his troubles. But that is until word comes from his household that it's going to be too late, and Jairus' faith is temporarily crushed. Hope and faith is draining away for this family, and there's an atmosphere of fear and confusion. They've decided it's too late, and they are losing faith. The faith that Jesus could provide the healing they need is drifting away. So I'd like us to return to one of those questions in our quiz, and it was that controversial one about whether Neil Armstrong was the first man on the moon. And I have got 6 or 7 people coming out to read something for me, if you would like to come up, those people. I had wondered about doing some moonwalking at this point to keep everyone occupied, but then I thought perhaps my children would never come to church with me ever again. So I decided against that. Let's do the Coca-Cola one. Thank you. Just stand in a line, that's fine. There we go. So we start at this end. And we have got some theories for you about this. Okay, we'll start with Steve.
The moon's surface during the daytime is so hot that the camera film should have melted.
Okay, I'll come round this way. Denise?
The backgrounds in the photos seem to be the same, despite the pictures being taken miles apart.
William?
A woman in Perth claimed to see a Coca-Cola bottle roll across the corner of her television screen during the live broadcast.
Coca-Cola screen on the screen. That's not good, is it?
The flag fluttered, even though there is no wind on the moon.
Thank you, Paul. Rebecca?
The angle and colour of the shadows are inconsistent, suggesting that artificial light sources were used.
Elizabeth?
There are no stars in the photos, and the astronauts claim not to remember seeing any.
The lunar modules made no blast craters on landing.
So we've got some conspiracy theories there. Thank you so much for reading those interesting theories. You can return to your seats now. Thank you. Thanks. So I wonder who has just a little bit less faith in that moon landing now. I have to admit, when my son came home from school and started telling me all those theories, I did start to wonder, and it did shake my faith in that a little bit. You see, earlier on, more than half of us had faith that Neil Armstrong was the first man on the moon. But then some of our friends came out, and they threw a few obstacles in our way, and suddenly we seemed to have a little bit less faith in that event. Well, a similar thing happened to Jairus in our story. The turn of events caused by Jesus being delayed was suffocating Jairus' budding faith. He wanted to believe, but others around him were trying to persuade him that there was no point anymore. But before doubt could take a firm hold, Jesus challenges Jairus, and he challenges him to hold on to his faith and says, "Do not fear, only believe." He refuses to allow others to stifle the boundaries of Jairus' faith. And he reminds us that even when we feel doubt, we will all be answered in some way when we cry out to him. We are invited to believe that Jesus is more than adequate for each of us in every situation. Do not fear, only believe. And when we look at our two miracle stories together, we might notice that the woman who had been unwell and Jairus were both of two completely different social standings. Jairus would have been very influential, whereas the woman, as we mentioned before, would most likely have been a social outcast. But you know, Jesus favours neither, and Jesus ignores neither. Everywhere Jesus goes, he's an example of compassion. He loves those considered outcasts, like the woman may have been, and he even loves those who might consider others to be outcasts, like Jairus. And he offers the gift of salvation to both, as he does to anyone who will place their faith in him. So do we fully trust and believe in the power of faith? Or are we unable to fulfill our true potential in life because we allow others to influence us and tell us what we should and shouldn't have faith in? That's a bit like our moon landing theories. Do we let other people's theories and opinions influence our own feelings and beliefs? Or do we put our faith in Christ, as Jairus ultimately did? Or do we put too much of our faith in other people's opinions? In today's stories, Jesus does not leave either believer in the position that he finds them, but rather he had the power to greatly alter and improve both of their situations. And what God has planned for your particular situation is what counts. And what others think, it can be useful. It is useful to listen to our friends and family and sound out what other people's thoughts are. But it is secondary to what God thinks. So try not to let other people put unnecessary obstacles in your way, like with those moon landing conspiracies. Instead, for true guidance, go to the one who can give it. Be like Jairus and let Jesus in. Let him be your problem solver, your burden bearer, and your hope. Because we all have a great need for Christ, but we have a great Christ for our need. Amen.